Hey, it is Scott Tempesta from Sailing Anarchy. This is our little video interview series we call the 15 Minutes of Fame, thanks to Andy Warhol. I hope there's no estate lawsuit coming from them to us for using that. Probably would be. Our guest today is John Mollicone. He's the head coach. Actually, it's a much more fancy title than this, but he's the head sailing coach at Brown University, one of the top Ivy League schools. And John, let me say a Sailing Anarchy hello and welcome.
Yeah, Scott, thanks a lot for having me. I really appreciate it, and thanks for sponsoring the Coach of the Year award. You know, it certainly is a very meaningful award, and I was really excited to get it this year.
Thanks. I mean, we were really pleased to be a part of it, along with Sail One Design, and the accolades that came in about you were impressive. And I thought, we haven't really done, let me rephrase that. We've never done anything with college sailing, and it seems pretty lame. So I thought now would be a really great time to do that. Let me ask you a question. What was it about coaching? So you sailed 4 years at Boston U, right? BU.
Yep.
And so what was it about coaching? Because correct me if I'm wrong, you went pretty much straight from BU to coaching at Brown, correct?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
What was it about coaching that made you go, this is a direction I want to go?
I think, when I graduated my senior year at BU, I was, I had a really awesome experience sailing in college. It wasn't always perfect all the time, but, by the time I graduated, it left a really, really good taste in my mouth, and I really enjoyed it. And, the friendships I made, the whole experience, just being, on a team, practice every day, the regattas and, just everything about it. I really, really, was lucky to be a part of it. We had some really good teams at BU when I was there. And, I also was coaching in the summers, and I was like the head coach at my local yacht club. I think time I was about 16 years old, and I was the head racing coach, and really enjoyed that too. And, I wasn't sure what I was going to do when I graduated. I majored in, advertising, and, thought I might use that and, get a real job. And, but I had a really good, experience my senior year and did well sailing. And I started to get some phone calls about, maybe going to work for sailmakers and, doing stuff like that. And then I was really fortunate that, the former coach at Brown before me actually called me and said that he was leaving Brown, and I'm from the Providence area. So, my local school here, Brown, that they were looking for a coach, and he's like, you should apply for it. I think you'd be great. We used to sail with Brown a lot when I was at BU, so I knew him. I knew a lot of people on the team, and I applied for it, and I got the job. And I got it at a time when Brown was kind of going from being a more, a little bit more like part-time coaches they had, a little bit more of the student run, a little more of a club type team in a way. They were really good, but, a little bit more of the students really kind of ran the program, and the coaches would sort of come and go a little bit. And kind of luckily fell into it at a time when the school started to put a lot of money into the program, and I became sort of the first full-time head coach that Brown ever hired. And, I thought I'd try it for, a year or two, see what I thought. I wasn't getting paid a lot of money, but I, loved the game and loved coaching, and,
right.
Was able to combine my love for coaching with college sailing, which I really loved, and thought I'd, try it, and, really fell in love with it. And, just everything about it, the kids at Brown are just awesome kids. They're very passionate and driven, and obviously, if they got into an Ivy League school, they've done a lot of things the right way, throughout their youth. And, they're obviously very, very intelligent, and they're really easy to deal with. And, they all enjoy being here and just working hard and having fun along the way. So
21 years later, you are still there.
Yeah. Like said, and it's really been, there's no doubt that, the program has grown. During my time, I've been really lucky that, we've been able to have a lot of support from our alumni and our parents and of our program. And, we've been able to build an incredible sailing center that we have now. It's the Ted Turner Sailing Pavilion that we've been in for a couple of years now. Ted Turner sort of gave us the lead gift. He's a Brown. He went to Brown. He didn't graduate, but he got an honorary degree, eventually and stuff. But, he sort of gave us the lead gift to build the sailing center, which has been, really one of my biggest goals for this program is to get a permanent home, and also to endow, our coaching positions and a chunk of the program so that it's sustainable and it'll be here, through times like this, where, we know we have, we've got a lot of money, in the bank, and, our program can operate at the highest level in college sailing. And, we're not just scraping by like we kind of were when I started. So
that's really great.
But yeah, it's great. And I kind of, I have flexibility in the summer, in the off season, in the winter to do some sailing, which is great too. So I can kind of supplement, my work at Brown with a little bit of stuff on the outside, and it works out pretty well.
Hey, John, hit a couple of obviously we're focusing on collegiate sailing, but hit a couple of your highlights of some of the sailing that you've done personally.
Yeah, I mean, recent years, it's been a lot of, I would say the two primary boats have been J70s and J24s. Fortunate enough to win a couple of J24 worlds. And come in, on the podium a bunch of times as well. And, on the J70, I've sailed with Tim Healy a lot from North Sails. I've done more racing with Tim than anybody, at least over the last 10 years. So we've done a lot together, and, kind of combined forces doing a lot of the J24 stuff and the J70 stuff. And so, those are, two of my favorite boats. Obviously, I love doing whatever I can fit in, between the two classes, and done a couple worlds with Tim in the 70 and a bunch of Key West race weeks and midwinters and North Americans. We've won a bunch of those things. And, and then some other, big boat stuff on the side, sail on a FAR 40 in Chicago. And, in recent years that the worlds have been there and the North Americans. So we've had some really good sailing there.
Cool.
And, supposed to do the offshore worlds in September in Newport. I don't know if that's going to happen. Most likely not. But whatever I get called up to do, if it fits in my schedule. I have lots of people who, give me a call. They're looking for, a main trimmer or a tactician, whatever it may be. I'm always looking to go racing if it kind of fits in. So
let's switch gears a little bit back to head coaching. So I'm assuming you wear a number of hats as a head coach. I think a head coach of any sport, it's not just the coaching. It's not just the product that you put out there, that is being the team. Of course, the goal is always to win, duh. But what is the hardest part now that you've been doing this? By the way, you've been doing this for 21 years.
Okay.
I started sailing Anarchy 21 years ago. So, we've all seen a lot of things happen. But as a coach, what's the hardest? Is there a single hardest part about it?
The coaching is the easiest part. It's what I look forward to every day. One of the hardest things is, you're in the office and you have meetings before practice and meeting with kids on the team or recruits, fundraising, dealing with administrative stuff, all that stuff is, you have to kind of know how to, I think, to have a successful sailing program, you have to be kind of good at, running a small business. And, that stuff takes up a lot of time, hammering through emails around, meetings and having to deal with, 40 or so kids on the team. We usually have, there's at least a dozen of them that want to meet with you throughout the week. Some want to always meet, some you don't have to meet with at all, but dealing with them and, making sure that, they're all doing well in school is sort of number one, and they're happy with where they are with their sailing and helping them develop. So, that the easiest part, in my opinion, is literally I look forward to the coaching every weekend and the practices every day. It's all the other stuff, is certainly very time consuming. And when you get into the season, there's not enough hours in the day to kind of deal with everything else. Cause you know, and then if you have a family, you know, you're trying to spend some time with, I have a small daughter, you know, trying to spend time with her in the morning before I go to the office. And then, you know, it's like you have a couple hours to get work done, and then you've got a meeting or you've got to meet with some people, and then you have
Right.
recruits here, and then off to practice at 2 o'clock. And then you know, you're back home at 7:30 at night from practice or whatever, or 8 o'clock at night sometimes. So, you know, it's definitely, it's not an easy job in terms of hours and, you know, sort of the lifestyle at times. When you get into the season, the weeks in season are long, you know, the days are long. And, you know, every weekend you're coaching. Some coaches are away every single weekend, depending on where their program is. You know, we're kind of lucky. We're in Providence, and we're sort of in between Boston and Connecticut in that bubble where most of the regattas are in New England. So we don't have to travel very much, which is nice, but you're still gone all day on a Saturday, all day on a Sunday. You know how regattas go.
I do.
And then you practice 4 days a week, and you've got to get everything else done in between. And, you know, so it's certainly, it's very, very demanding during the season. And, you know, so, you know, but luckily we all kind of get some time in the summer to sort of step back a little bit, and in the winter.
Do you have assistant coaches?
Yeah, I have a full-time assistant. You know, full-time meaning he's at practice every day. He coaches every weekend, and I can rely on him to, you know, do other things that I might need. But, you know, I do most of the day-to-day stuff. We kind of rely on him more to just focus on coaching. So his name's Michael Sonnenberg. We've had him for 2 years, and we're hoping to have him back again next year. He's been a really great addition, and, you know, he's a former, you know, pretty strong college sailor who he can still go out and beat our kids in practice. So we have him sail, you know, quite a bit and help develop crews and work with our team race team and sail with them a lot.
Nice.
And then we have a third coach who just does weekend coaching. So, you know, there's 3 of us every weekend coaching the team, you know, at various regattas.
Got it. We have a number of questions from anarchists, and I'll get to those. But one of the things that's always fascinated me the most about any collegiate sport, and now we're talking sailing, so this one applies too. Walk me through recruiting. Like, how do you do that? I assume a certain amount of kids just want to come to Brown and want to sail, but you know, there's top level high school sailors around the country, right? I know Point Loma High, San Diego. I mean, that God knows that's a breeding ground for talent.
Sure.
How do you guys approach recruiting, and what's involved there?
Yeah, you know, recruiting takes up a lot of time. You know, like I was talking about the hard parts of you know, being a head coach, and certainly, you know, recruiting takes up a lot of your time in terms of just meeting with recruits, emailing back and forth with recruits, or on the phone. Now, because most of the high school juniors, you know, right now can't visit, you know, doing a lot of FaceTime or Zoom meetings with kids, or, you know, a lot of time on the phone trying to talk about your program. So it takes up a lot of time. And, you know, I think we're you know, we're lucky. We have a lot of really good kids that come to us first. There's no doubt about that. I get, you know, probably on average 5 to 10 emails a day, you know, from recruits.
Do you guys scout? Do you scout people?
Yeah, and you know, I definitely keep up with the regattas. You know, all the good junior events. I look at results. I run. I'm the head coach at a big clinic in Newport called the Brooke Gonzalez Clinic. It's sort of become one of the, you know, certainly if it's not the biggest, it's one of the biggest and best advanced youth racing clinics out there. So, you know, you get to meet a lot of kids at clinics. I do some clinics on the side, or I, you know, I've done some coaching at the, you know, other, you know, many junior regattas. So you kind of get to know, you know, some of these kids, or you see them sail. You know, so yeah, there's definitely times where you just meet a kid at a regatta and talk to him, or I might just call somebody and say, hey, you know, are you interested in coming to check Brown out? You know, that does happen. There's some, you know, some Point Loma kids that I've certainly, you know, there's sort of you know, they're the top high school program. There are some kids there where some of those kids will reach out to me, and, you know, it's great. We try to get them out for a visit, and they spend some time with us, and we, you know, obviously their academics have to be good. That's the biggest
Obviously.
thing. Getting into a school like Brown it's not easy. The acceptance rate is about 6%. So your academics have to be at a certain, standard just to even kind of, not waste everybody's time even visiting.
Right.
You have to meet that threshold first. But most kids are emailing me or calling, and there are definitely some that I'll reach out to for sure. And
It,
but all of us as head coaches, we certainly, we follow the results and we meet kids along the way at clinics and regattas, and we kind of know what's going on.
is there much scholarship money?
There's no scholarships in college sailing, so it's against
Really?
our rules. And Ivy League schools also don't give any athletic scholarships either. So even if we could, if college sailing was part of the NCAA and could do scholarships, Ivy Leagues don't do them for athletics. But what the Ivy Leagues do have is a lot of financial aid available.
Got
So
it.
at Brown, for domestic kids, there's a lot of financial aid, and I think the numbers like 60-something% of the students in Brown get some sort of financial aid.
But isn't collegiate sailing an NCAA recognized sport?
No, it's not. We're our own governing body. It's the Intercollegiate Sailing Association.
So you want to know something weird? It's just because I happen to be drinking out of his cup. So my youngest kid got a scholarship to go to Maryville University on esports. Got a gaming scholarship.
Yep.
And it's an esports is an NCAA recognized sport.
Yeah.
And it was interesting. So he's a gamer kid, and what gamer kids do? They game.
Yep.
And it was just interesting. So we had to look at all of the NCAA rules. The drug testing. If you're a freshman, you get to pick classes first over anybody.
Yep.
Because you're a student athlete, right? I find that amazing that and I'm just completely naive and a little dumb on this, but I'm sort of stunned that it's not. Aren't you?
Yeah. So, every school, handles their programs differently, right? So in college sailing, it's you've got a lot of varsity teams. They're recognized as varsity sports by their school. And because of that, their school might make them adhere to the NCAA rules within their athletic department, or some of the rules or most of the rules. And, in the Ivy League, some of the schools make their college sailings follow a lot of the Ivy League rules as well as the NCAA rules. Some teams are club and have no rules. And we're kind of a hybrid at Brown. We're a club varsity team. So we're definitely unique. There's a few other teams that are like us where, we're basically within varsity athletics. We're looked at in most ways as a varsity program, but we're not counted as a varsity sport by the university. So because of that, there's certain things that we don't have to abide by. So we can go to basically as many regattas as we want every weekend. And our kids, as long as we can get them there in vehicles, and we have a team van, plus, a lot of kids have cars, we can go do those things. If we were a varsity sport and we had to follow the NCAA rules at Brown, that they probably would make us follow some of them. They might say, listen, you're not going anywhere without a coach and a school vehicle. So there are, every school's different with how they have their rules and regulations for things.
Interesting.
So we have some freedom that some varsity teams don't have. And there's certain, things that we might not fully get that if we were varsity, we would get. So, like I said, we're sort of a hybrid and a unique program for sure.
Interesting. As fun as you guys all have, listen, they're college kids. You're incredibly youthful. At the end of the day, though, you guys are serious as a heart attack when it comes to racing, right? I mean, the kids are focused. The kids are good, right? Your reputation is on the line. The school's reputation is on the line. The kids want to be successful individually and also for the school. So, I mean, it's serious business when it gets right down to it. It's just in terms of the intensity and the seriousness of the sailing, correct?
Yeah, and there are a lot of teams. There's 200 teams in college sailing, I think, around there, and there's probably 40 to 50 really, serious programs that have coaches or, multiple coaches and have, pretty good budgets and, are doing everything they can to get to the national championships and, want to win. And then there's another 150 teams that are more student run with no coaches or part-time coaching that, they're really, getting to the nationals. They don't care about that. They just want to go sailing and have a good experience. And there's a mixed bag for sure. And, our program at Brown, we try to, we want to win, we want to do well, but we want to have fun too. And not all of our kids in our program are, they're not all here to try to win. Some kids are walk-on kids we didn't even know about that have never sailed a boat in their lives till they got to Brown. And we're trying to train them how to sail, and hopefully they graduate having had a great experience, and they're going to keep sailing. And it's something that was a huge part of their college experience. So, we've got kids, we just, we're graduating a senior this year who went to the Olympics in 2016 in the 49er FX class for Norway, and we've got kids who we don't even come this fall, if we're in school and we're sailing, we don't even know some of the kids that might join the team, and they'll be, just tremendous additions and members of the team over 4 years. So, it's pretty cool that it introduces the sport to a lot of people. Our team's a mix, and it makes it a lot of fun for me, and at all skill levels. In the end, by the time someone graduates, I mean, they go from being, totally inexperienced to they could be an all-American crew by the time they graduate or start at a national championship. We've had those things happen. So it's pretty cool to see that whole thing.
That's great. It's great to see there's so many opportunities for kids. I didn't quite know the full front of what you guys do. And it's good to know that there's that aspect for those kind of kids as well. I think that's great.
Yeah.
Let's wrap up and let's go to some reader questions. And I think these are all fairly straightforward. CT Driver wants to know, who is your best coach?
It's a good question. I had a lot of really good coaches when I was in college. I had Skip White was he just recently retired, about a year or so ago from being the URI head coach. And Skip was an Olympic coach for the U.S. and stuff like that for a long time. But he was my coach at BU when I started. I certainly learned a lot from him, and was always impressed, just with him and having him around. But he was only at BU for a short time when I was there, and then he went to coach the U.S. Olympic team,
right?
A U.S. sailing team,
right?
And then I also had Bern Nowak, who's one of the Harvard coaches now. He was great, learned a lot from him, and Mike Horn, who was another former Harvard coach, had him. So I had a bunch of different coaches. Brad Churchill, they all certainly, there was always some great things, great things from all of them that I learned and always kind of stick in my mind. So
awesome.
They were awesome.
Let's see. Okay, your favorite regatta memory. Okay, here's a good one. What really pisses you off in this sport?
That's a good question. I don't know if I have a good answer for that. It's not, there's not too much that bothers me when it comes to sailing. I mean, obviously for me, I'm happy being there. I'm happy being on the water. You could complain about a number of different things at some point, whether it be, some stupid situation on the water, or in coaching, it could be a little recruiting thing with another program, or, there's so many different things that once in a while can happen, but there's nothing that sticks out in my mind that really bothers me all that much.
All right. That's rare, because if you interviewed me, my whole thing would be about what pisses me off in sailing. But
yeah, well, what would your answer be?
Oh, I see. You're turning the tables on me.
Yeah, well, I'm curious because nothing really sticks out in my mind when it comes to that question.
And I have a completely different perspective on it because it's almost all personally based, right? I do a certain kind of racing. It's really denigrated, I think it's a safe word to use, to PHRF sailing. I mostly have been a big boat sailor, hardly done any one design stuff at all, although I've done some stuff. And I would say that the biggest problem that I see is there's all these boats out there and they just don't race. And, you know, we're in San Diego, which should, by the way, be the most popular sailing place like on the planet. The weather is perfect. Yes, it's light air. Okay. And I've turned into a light air specialist because I live in San Diego and I love light air. When it starts to blow, I'm like, it's not that much fun, but I like the light stuff. I love the nuances of it. But specifically, what comes to mind, John, is that there just aren't enough people playing anymore. There's all these boats and nobody comes out. I mean, we hardly have any new boats. You know, the one design fleets are Etchels. There's a burgeoning Finn class, which is very cool, which is super cool. And J105s, and that's sort of it. You know, I've spent the last 12 or 14 years or so in sport boats, and I love that. But we've never been able to get a critical mass at all in San Diego for sport boats, which, you know, once you sail one, you know, J70 is like one, but it's not like a powered up. You know, I sailed Flying Tigers and I had the Melgus 32. And so when you sail those boats, it's like, oh my God. And I just always was amazed that people didn't go, those guys look like they're having a lot more fun over there as they go rolling past us with their kite up, right? Yep. So it's been discouraging to me, San Diego, to not only not see the numbers grow, but to see participation decline. And, you know, maybe this will be a corrective course. I mean, it very well could be, right? It could both ruin it if people go, just, oh, forget it, I'm not doing this anymore. Or I'd like to think that people miss it. And they maybe start coming out a bit more. So that would be my primary bitch.
I mean, I would say there's probably there's also just too many different classes out there. You know, and it's expensive. You know, I would say, if there was one thing that maybe might bother me more than anything, it really is the cost to go out and put together a competitive team to go try to win. It's expensive, even if it's a J70. Or a J24. It's expensive, and those are sort of the bottom of the barrel, in terms of cost to go racing at a high level for a small keel boat. So
well, and on that, J70 class is laden with pros, and pros are not cheap. Although I imagine the rates will be slightly discounted once all of this ends, but at least they had better be. But, it would not be unrealistic to say that it would cost a guy $30,000 to go do a top level J70 regatta with top level people, right?
Sure. Yep.
I think those things are going to change. People might think twice about spending that for regattas, right? So I think we're going to see a definite paradigm shift in the whole sport. Where it goes, I don't really know. All right, let's go. Let's see. DeCapo in New York says, how do we coach/teach sailing with social distancing? With this pandemic, fuck up whole year's worth of progress with our junior sailors and Olympic sailors. So I think basically, how do you go forward with social distancing is a good question.
Yeah, it's a good question. I'm on a committee within our conference that we're in college sailing, the New England Intercollegiate Sailing Association. That's sort of the kind of a task force for this whole thing. And we're trying to come up with plans for what we're going to do in the fall if we're able to sail. And it's again, everything's so fluid right now. It's changing so much that, we're trying to come up with basically something we can hand to our athletic directors, our athletic departments, and be like, hey, this is what we're going to do in college sailing. It's going to be tough to go sail double-handed boats if we have to be 6 feet apart in the boat. You can't do that. So, I'm hoping that there comes a point where we're in phase 3 or whatever here in Rhode Island, later this summer or something, where you can be in some larger groups and hopefully, you can be next to somebody, as long as it's maybe people you're around all the time or something. I don't know. I don't know how we're going to handle this in the fall if we're back in college, and there's college sports. Testing is probably going to be the biggest thing, I would think. And if everybody can get tested and, do we have to wear face masks sailing, it's tough to wear a buff up over your nose with sunglasses on a warm day, sailing. Those kind of things are a mask, so I don't know I don't know what's going to happen. I think in Rhode Island, they're really trying to, have um, some junior sailing stuff still happen in small groups. Might be a lot of single-handed sailing, opties and, cat rig the 420s or something, or spread out 6 feet apart with two people in a you know, a 20-foot boat they might have or something, J22s or whatever it might be. So I think the junior programs might be able to get by, at some point this summer with the social distancing and everything. But for our college game, it's going to be tough if we can't distance. But here's the thing: if other sports are going, they can't distance either. So if college sports come back in the fall, and I think it's all going to start really with college football. If college football is going to happen, then it gives hope for the rest of us. But if they decide that sports, it's not safe to have people, within 6 feet of each other, it's going to be tough in the college sailing game. You got two people in a boat, shoulder to shoulder, hiking upwind, and it's going to make it tough. Maybe we're sailing lasers, but I don't know.
It is partly because the goalposts keep moving, right? I mean, if you listen to the asshole pretending to be president of this country, well, you think, well, we should open everything up. But then you look at data that shows rates continuing to go up, and this is still a drug that is really not, a virus is not all that well understood yet. And so it's hard to plot a course when, hey, wait a minute, you move the goalposts, right? So that's obviously going to be tough for everybody. Justice Skosh, a super anarchist from New Hampshire, has a really good question. And we'll just ask a couple more of these, John, then I'll let you go. And I really appreciate your time today. It's really educational. Thanks, man.
Yeah.
He asked, how can you help keep collegiate sailors from burning out and never racing again after they graduate?
Yeah, it's a really good question. It's a problem for sure. We're seeing in college sailing, a lot of people graduate and then they never sail again. It's certainly, it's a time consuming sport. You have to love it if you're going to do it in college. It's 2 seasons. It's a lot of time. It's literally, with the weekend travel at times, or weekend regattas being long, and the practice during the week, workouts, meetings, it takes up a lot of your time. And there's no doubt about it. And some kids are ready to graduate and they're done and they don't want to do it again. But I think if you do your best as a coach to give them, a really good experience, it's not all about the results all the time, and they have a good experience with it and they just enjoy the process and enjoy being on the water, with their teammates and traveling to new venues and, meeting new people. You hope that a lot of them are going to want to keep doing it. And that's one thing that, you try to do it as a coach. You want to see kids graduate and hopefully stay in it in some way. I think, we've had a lot of kids at Brown graduate that have gone on to, join their, yacht club, if, whether it be New York or, Sawanica or whatever, and they're team racing. So there's definitely a big, you see a lot of former collegiate sailors doing the keelboat team race circuit. They come out to California, they do the Baldwin Cup in the Harbor 20s. A lot of our kids will join, a club and do that. And not all of them, but, certainly, a good chunk of them are doing things like that. And we've got some that are doing, like Charlie Enright and Mark Towell are doing their 3rd around the world race. They sailed for me at Brown. We had another fairly recent graduate go to the Olympics in 2016, and basically learned how to race at a high level in college here at Brown. So, there are kids that they have a great experience. They want to keep doing it. They're really, passionate, driven, love the sport, and want to, some are sailing as much as they can. Others are, they do the keelboat team racing or some other local sailing. And, I think if opportunities are out there for kids, then, they graduate, that, a lot of them would probably come back in some way if the opportunities are there. But I think a question I get asked the most is, what do I do now that I graduated if I want to keep sailing? What do I do? I can't afford to buy a boat. Right. I got a job, but I'm not at a point where I could go buy something. What do I do? And I always tell them, if you can join a yacht club that has some sort of program where you can team race keelboats. It's like a lot of that community is all former college sailors.
Right.
So they're actually, they're having a lot of fun because they're having big parties on the weekends at the regattas, and they're having a great time, and they're sailing at a high level still. And
Yeah.
so that's probably where I see most of our kids that graduate kind of go, as they get into that scene.
You'd like
So
you'd like to think that some of them, okay, they go into the workplace and they have some success, and then they can buy a boat and come back into sailing. I don't know how much of that there is. I know in San Diego, I don't think we see a whole lot of that at San Diego Yacht Club, but that would seem to be a kind of a natural progression that one would like to see in the sport. Speaking
yeah,
of Charlie Enright, we're going to interview him in early June. So
yeah,
that'll
right.
be really looking forward to that. Okay, let's wrap this up with a last question here. Let's see. Oh, this is pretty good. How many of your team frostbite?
We have a really, really great laser fleet in Newport. Newport's about a 45-minute ride or so from where we are in Providence. So it's easy to get there. I would say every fall, kind of towards the end of the fall season, we'll send some kids there to do a little bit of laser sailing with that fleet. They'll get 30 to 50 boats out. I used to sail a lot with them, and it's a great fleet, a lot of great sailors in it. So we'll do some of that. We have our college sailing single-handed nationals at the end of the fall. So that's in November. And a lot of times we have, most years we've had some, one or two kids qualify for it. So we'll send them there to do a little bit of sailing in that fleet. But it's the college sailing rules have gotten a little bit tighter in recent years, and we're starting to mirror the NCAA rules in a lot more ways. It used to be a lot more kind of loosey-goosey in the college world, where you could go sail as many regattas as you wanted. And, if you wanted to give your kid a laser that you owned at your school, they could go do, regattas in the boat or whatever. You could even give them money or coach them. Now we only can compete 18 weekends during the school year.
Oh, wow.
So if we send someone to frostbite lasers, and this is, I've had some of these frostbite people ask me, why don't you send your kids more? If they don't have their own equipment, and if they have to have a way to get themselves there, and they have to have their own equipment. Otherwise, if they go and it's out of season, because frostbiting is mainly in the winter, it's when we're done at Brown, it counts as a competition weekend if they go with a Brown laser. And we used to do that. We used to send, we tell kids, you can have a boat for the winter and take it to Newport, and you can go frostbite or use some of our equipment. And can't do that anymore. It counts as a competition weekend. So they have to be able to go on their own and have their own equipment, which isn't easy, and most kids can't bring their own stuff with them to school. So
right, of course not. And so I guess you sort of answered this. The second part of this is, do you make frostbiting part of a structured off-season training?
No, we don't. We like I said, if we have a kid that's getting ready to go to the nationals, we'll send them down there to sail, get on a starting line with a lot of lasers, because there's really not much college sailing in lasers. There's the nationals and like our qualifier, and that's it. And when we send the people there, it's usually within the college sailing season, so we're not using a weekend up or anything, under our rules. But yeah, if anybody wants to do it, they got to kind of figure it out on their own. Any sailing they do outside of college, they kind of have to figure out on their own, because we can't support them, or it's going to count as a competition weekend, most of the time. So, there might be recommendations for sure. Hey, you should think about doing the laser midwinters, but again, that might be a kid on our team who already has a boat in Florida. That's where they're from, and it's easy for them. And it's not going to count against us. And sure, any sailing they want to do, I encourage it. But some of them, Scott, honestly, the college season ends in November, and we're kind of shutting down, and they get into final exams. And some of them, they need a break. Some of them just, they need to kind of turn it off for a little bit. And then when the spring comes, they're ready, ready to go.
But then there's animals who just want to go all the time, every regatta, now, right? Here's the last part of this question. So Blunderful said he's thinking specific in regards to the frostbite, thinking specifically of Laser Fleet number 413 in Newport, and a fair number of Brown team members. Shout out, I guess that's to Kevin Hall. Shout out to Kevin Hall, who spiced things up back in the day. And that was part of back in the day when you didn't have to count these weekends, right?
Yep. Yeah. So, I mean, again, you can go if you can figure it all out on your own. But a lot of these kids in school, they don't have a car, so they have to be able to get to Newport. I can't take them.
Wait a minute, John. A brown student without a car? That's impossible.
You know, some of them do, but you know, and then the other thing too, again, these kids are sailing in a lot of cold weather. We get into November up here, it's cold. You know, it's starting to get chilly. They're in dry suits, and it's a long season. You know, they're sailing. Most of the kids in the team are sailing 6 days a week. They've got schoolwork too, and you know, it's demanding for a lot of them what their course load is. And you know, the season ends, and it's kind of like, you know, you need time off. You need time off, and some of those kids, it's not much time off. It's December and January because we get back on the water. We're frostbiting in college sailing for months of our season. We get on the water in February. Cool. And March is not much better, you know, so it's frostbiting for us.
You know, the notion of a student athlete is a really difficult thing. I mean, you know, people I think forget, especially at a school like Brown, right, where there are academic standards and everybody's trying to achieve academically, but you know, you love your sport, but you gotta, you know, do your studies and your classes, and it's a burden for kids. Don't you see that? I'm sure you see it all the time, actually, right?
Yeah, it's certainly, you know, no, kids are all different. Some of them have harder concentrations than others. Some of them are, you know, just do a better job managing their time than others and get their studying done. Or some of them have photographic memories and studying's easy, you know? So, I mean, they're all different, but you have to be good at managing your time without a doubt. And I think, you know, again, to get into an Ivy League school, a school like Brown, you've already got to be pretty good at that. And you've obviously done well testing and in school. And, you know, so they come in here, most of the kids do a good job of balancing it all. And sailing, you know, I think for a lot of them keeps them on track, you know, gives them a good routine. They get in that routine during the season. They know, like, I get home from practice, I go to the cafeteria, and I'm studying from 8 to midnight, and I'm going to bed. And, you know I have practice, and on the weekends, I know what, you know, how much time I need to get stuff done. And, you know, then the season is over, and a lot of times they end up, you know, getting lazy. They don't have structure. They don't have their routine. And, but, you know, fortunately, there's not a lot of downtime. They're sailing almost all the school year, you know, because December and January is like final exams, and they're home on like a 6-week break at a school like Brown, you know, for the winter. So they're, you know, there's not a lot of downtime for them.
Got it. Well, listen, let's hope this current situation that we're all facing gets better for you guys. I feel bad for your seniors. It's got to be tough. I'm sure you feel terrible for them to have this sort of taken away. But, you know, we have to look forward to a brighter day. It has to be here, right?
Yep, definitely. You know, we'll get through it, and we'll, you know, can't wait for the day the kids get back, and, you know, we're back at it, you know.
That's awesome. So, I love that. John, I want to thank you for your time. Really appreciate it. And we'll check in with you again and see how things are progressing.
Yeah, sounds good, Scott. Thanks a lot for having me. I really appreciate it. And, you know, thanks again for, you know, for the award. I really appreciate it.
It sounds to me like you pretty much deserve it.
Well, thanks.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it.
All right. Thanks again.